The Office of the Chief Medical Examiner has confirmed a man who died as a result of a drug overdose in March had heroin, W-18, and 3-methylfentanyl, a highly toxic form of fentanyl, in his system when he died. This is the first reported case of W-18 being found in a body in Alberta. 3-methylfentanyl is an analog of fentanyl that is 10 to 15 times more toxic than the base version of the street drug. Either substance may be fatal. At approximately 10:40 p.m. on Monday, March 7th, 2016, police and paramedics were called to a hotel in South Calgary for reports of a medical collapse that was believed to be drug-related. A 35-year-old man was confirmed deceased by EMS at the scene. He leaves behind a common-law wife and an infant daughter. In the hotel room, police found a drug consistent with heroin, drug paraphernalia, and a Naloxone kit in the room with the deceased. The Naloxone kit had not been used. Let me be clear. W-18 and fentanyl are deadly, and you will never know if it's hiding in the drugs you are taking. This is not a matter of if it will kill you. It is a matter of when. I can please take questions.
How worried are you that there's more of this stuff out there?
Very concerned. I think it's safe to say that W-18, 3-methylfentanyl, and other analogs of fentanyl are on the streets of Calgary right now, and it will continue to kill people.
Can you briefly describe W-18?
Sure. W-18 is a very toxic compound that may be far more toxic than fentanyl itself. It was developed in 1984 in the University of Alberta, but never patented. We believe it's currently being synthesized in China and then imported into Canada.
What effects can it have on the body?
Well, that's a good question. It's relatively unknown how toxic this drug is and how it interacts with the brain. But we do believe it could have deadly consequences.
The headline on the press release says first W-18 death. Do we know if the W-18 or the 3-methylfentanyl were in the heroin?
Yeah.
What's the actual mechanism of death?
We do not know. And the problem with W-18 is that it takes a very minuscule amount to cause problems. What the medical examiner cannot tell us is the quantity of W-18 in the body. They've actually been only able to screen through a spectrum for the last week locating W-18. So there may be other cases where people have been deceased where W-18 was in their body, and we haven't been able to determine that. So the medical examiner is going to go back and look at those autopsies.
Let me just clarify that. It's only been a week that they've actually been able to test for W-18 in dead people?
For toxicology, yeah.
So it's not surprising this is the first time it's been seen, even though there may be others.
Exactly, and we do recognize that, and the medical professions recognize that too. The problem with W-18, it's relatively unknown on how it reacts with the body, and it's relatively unknown if Naloxone, for example, will be effective with W-18.
Can you speak more about, you mentioned the Naloxone kit found in the hotel room? Is it known about that, or do you have concerns that it was there and not used?
Well, I think everyone needs to understand, if you're going into an overdose, you will not be able to utilize the Naloxone kit. So if you want to speak about harm reduction, I know AHS has a number of messages, but they do promote, certainly our message from the police would be abstinence. The harm reduction message would be, if you're going to use, obviously, fentanyl or any other drugs, you better have a friend, someone who's able to call 911 and access Naloxone, because you cannot access Naloxone when you're by yourself going into an overdose.
Is it cheaper than fentanyl?
No, it's not. It's slightly more expensive. But unfortunately, W-18, similar to fentanyl, is accessible on the internet.
So how quickly, from start of an overdose to calling 911, how quickly can this kill someone?
That is unknown, and it's based on a number of factors. Combination of drugs, the quantity of drugs taken. So there's a number of factors that I simply couldn't answer.
Is W-18 illegal?
It's not a controlled substance.
So it's not illegal?
Right.
So is there anything like more security agencies can do to sort of stop the flow of these? It's just powder coming in?
So the message that really needs to get out is that the people in Canada who are importing W-18 or fentanyl powder, because it's coming in powder, have no idea if they're getting fentanyl, a fentanyl analog, or W-18. The people that are taking the powder and processing it into these tablets have no idea what they're processing or the quantity. The drug dealers that are selling these tablets on our street have no idea what they're selling, and ultimately the end user, the people that are abusing drugs in our community, have no idea what they're taking. Health Canada has said that the lethal dosage of fentanyl is 2 milligrams. That is probably conservative. It probably takes less than that to kill you. We have been seizing tablets in Calgary, and I've already alluded to this, at 4.6 to 5.6 milligrams. And as far as W-18 goes, we have no idea actually the quantity that was going to be required to kill you.
But just using logic thinking, we've seen reports it could be 15 times, 60 times, 100 times more powerful. So using logic, it's less than fentanyl if you get a salt strain on your finger of W-18 can kill you.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. I think everyone agrees that it is unknown how much more toxic W-18 is than fentanyl, and of course depending on the fentanyl analogs. Here we're talking about 3-methylfentanyl, which is 10 to 15 times more power than fentanyl.
Is there an urgency in your sort of department to rush down on pill presses and labs and things like that before more people die?
So obviously, law enforcement had a significant win last week in the passing of Bill 205, regulating pill presses. We know that these pill presses are being used to reprocess this powder into tablets, and the tablets can resemble any prescription drug. I mean, obviously we've been focusing on the tablets that look like fake Oxy, but they could be put into Percocet, any other tablet. So the reality is no one knows actually what they're consuming. There's no such thing as a safe street drug.
This is the unknown. That's the stuff that you don't know about W-18. That's the most concerning.
Absolutely. There's a lot of research going on both in Canada and the United States that actually look at what W-18 does to the person's brain. Does it react the same as an opioid? Does it react differently? And I think the message is unclear at this time.
Are there tests that it's easily to discover that it is W-18?
No, it's extremely difficult to detect W-18 in the body. And as I mentioned, the medical examiner's office in Alberta just recently received a spectrum to look at that. Tests will obviously continue. As far as law enforcement goes, we have no idea if we seize a powder, whether it's fentanyl or W-18, until we send it to Health Canada for analysis.
Is AHS a little behind the ball and to sort of working in partnership with you guys? If they don't know what it is, how can you really test it and go further?
They are absolutely cooperating with us and collaborating, and this is an ongoing investigation into the research of W-18 because it's such an unknown substance. And no one knows if Naloxone will be effective on it, for example.
Just clarification on a couple of things,
Sure.
if you could. At the recent seizure, we were hearing it's 100 times more toxic than fentanyl. Today we're hearing we don't know.
It could be more, it could be slightly less. The message that I know that the Poison Center has put out is approximately 100 times. But I would say the research on that is continuing.
And then the other thing in the release, and you just said a drug consistent with heroin, is that apart from the W-18 found, or was W-18 in?
Yeah, so in the person, in the deceased body, there was W-18, 3-methylfentanyl, and heroin. As far as which one resulted in the person's death, we cannot say. 3-methylfentanyl and W-18 could result in a person's death independent of each other.
So just for clarity, so are people like actually actively saying on the street, whatever, might have a different name, but are they buying W-18? They're buying something and W-18 is in that something.
Yeah, I would say that the people that are selling the tablets that are killing people on our streets have no idea if it contains W-18 or fentanyl, and the user would have no idea what they're actually consuming, the quantity or the substance. Because the same process to take powdered fentanyl and W-18 is the same.
Is it believed that the powder is being shipped directly to Calgary from China, or maybe China being shipped with it?
It would have to go through Vancouver, the Vancouver Mail Center, because every international package has to clear customs.
I'm just curious about that, the supply chain to get it here. Is it being shipped here through the mail?
Yes.
And who's handling distribution at this end? Give me a sense of that.
Organized crime. Yeah.
That's a big blanket though.
Yeah.
What's happening?
There are numerous groups that obviously are very active in Calgary that are involved in the fentanyl trade. And we have seen a lot of violence in our community directly related to fentanyl distribution.
Does it not cause a bigger concern though? Because I've seen some of the, when you guys are clearing out a lab or what you believe to be a lab, it's hazmat all the way. Could this not create bigger problems? I mean, if a package is compromised coming into the Vancouver airport and it, has a leak or it explodes or something like that, is the handling of the powder?
Well, I don't think it will. I mean, the powder will not explode.
Well, no,
But absolutely, cross-contamination is a significant concern.
You were referring to prescription drugs.
Yeah.
So there's a concern probably prescription drugs being sold on the black market could actually.
No, what I'm saying is that when they're pressing the powder into tablets, they can make the tablets resemble any other prescription drug.
So someone could think they're buying a prescription drug on the black market.
Absolutely. And it could contain fentanyl or W-18. You'd have no idea.
Is there any reason why it doesn't raise red flags when it's being mailed? I mean, is it in boxes? Does it say it's...
So the problem with fentanyl and W-18 is that it takes a very small amount to make a tablet. And the pharmaceutical companies in China recognize this, and they're not shipping large quantities. They're shipping quantities in the grams. And we've had a couple of cases in Calgary where we've been alerted of seizures. But you have to appreciate this powder is being literally made for pennies. And the profit margins, which we've talked about, are enormous compared to most other drugs.
How many seizures of W-18 and, say, 3-methylfentanyl have you made here in Calgary?
3-methylfentanyl, at least 3. As far as W-18, just the one that we had last August. But I want to reiterate, we truly believe W-18 and 3-methylfentanyl are on our streets now. People may be consuming tablets that contain these drugs.
And those seizures, are they single pills in users' hands or are they multiple pills in dealers' hands?
The one in relation to W-18 was seized through a search warrant. We seized 110 tablets that we believed to contain fentanyl. We randomly selected 20 for testing. 3 came back containing W-18. So even within that seizure, we have some tablets that contain fentanyl, some that contain W-18. Until we send them to the lab, we have no idea.
Can you compare what the possible cost of the human life could be, W-18 compared to fentanyl? Because fentanyl's all we probably hear about, right?
Well, first of all, I want to let's look at 3-methylfentanyl. So we know that fentanyl can be deadly in a small quantity. Now we have 3-methylfentanyl, which is 10 to 15 times more toxic than fentanyl. W-18 being reported as 100 times more toxic than fentanyl. So are we concerned? Absolutely. I don't think we know the gravity of the situation until we actually go through past autopsies. And that's what the medical examiner is going to do.
So it could become more widespread, do you think?
Well, the problem is the people that are bringing the powder over, they do not know if they're receiving W-18 or fentanyl.
So is it entirely possible that many of the hundreds of fentanyl deaths that we've reported on in Alberta were actually W-18 deaths that were unrecognized at the time?
Obviously, through toxicology, the medical examiner is going to have to go back through those bodies. And obviously, with the new spectrum, they're hoping to do that.
With these ODs that result in death, there's also ODs that there's other consequences for the user. Can you tell us what those are?
Well, one of the consequences of, for example, fentanyl is you stop breathing. So you're depriving your brain oxygen. So there could be catastrophic results of that. I will say, that we have seen many overdoses in Calgary since the beginning of the year, almost on a daily basis. I know through our own internal documents that Naloxone has been saving lives as well. So that's important to recognize as well.
As you mentioned in this case, when you were talking about the Naloxone kit, so someone has to be there with a user in order to administer it.
Yeah.
Was someone there with this person? Who called 911?
Yeah. I'd have to verify. I do not believe someone was with this person in the room. I believe they were alone.
How tied to the violence in the city is the selling?
It's directly tied. It's a very profitable drug, and organized crime is obviously going to gravitate to what makes the money from illegal means, and right now fentanyl is one of the most profitable drugs.
So this victim was 35. What's the youngest victims that you've had?
In the teens.
Can you speak candidly on how frustrating this might be from your perspective? We've been gathering for these fentanyl warnings here at an unprecedented rate for the last year, and now we're hearing about something that's 100 times worse.
Yeah, to speak candidly, I know as a service, and personally I'm extremely frustrated. This is a drug, whether it's fentanyl or W-18, that does not discriminate. 2/3 of our deaths are in suburban communities. This is a drug that can affect any family in our community. It's a case where it does not allow for drug experimentation. Your first tablet could be your last. So it's very frustrating. It's frustrating that drug traffickers and the people that are abusing drugs have no idea what they're selling or they're taking. And every time they do that, they're putting their lives at risk.
So are they, sorry, one more question. So for sure they are going to go back through some of the, what they believe were fentanyl deaths to see if it was W-18?
Yeah, overdose deaths. Yeah.
Any overdose?
Overdose that they believe is drug-related, yes.
And there's the other one.
So this could have been around for a while.
Well, W-18 was first synthesized in 1984
In Alberta.
in Alberta at the University of Alberta.